How are you feeling this morning?
Fine, fine. I love mornings. Getting up is hard. Once I'm up, it's great. This is 1837 North Alexandria, where I moved 22 years ago. When I moved to LA, I had a job one street over on Mariposa. Took this for convenience. The job dissolved quickly, but the convenience has continued for 22 years now. I leave here every morning at 6 or 6:30. The route was decided quite by accident. 3 years ago, my doctor told me that if I didn't lose weight, I'd die. I was 300 pounds. And I was quite astonished, having neglected myself for so long. I looked in the mirror, and indeed, there was Santa Claus. So I dieted and walked and lost 130 pounds and became the svelte figure you see now. And the walk became habitual, and I love it. And this particular route, which is what I take virtually every day, is 30 blocks out to Glendale and back, 60 blocks, which Google tells me is about 7 miles. And the block has become ingrained in my consciousness. And also, oddly, in my life, there's several important things I do anyway that take me on this route. Here we're coming up to Alexandria and Franklin, a major boulevard. I know a lady who lives there who carries her pet rat with her in her bosom everywhere she goes. This is the religious block. At the end of it are two establishments which have been each 3 or 4 different churches in the 22 years I've lived here. The one on the left, the white one, was most recently the MCC, the gay church, and now has become a modern meditation center for the Buddhists. They have enormous statues of Buddha in there, big, huge, gilded statues, but you have to take your shoes off to go in and see them. This has been, I know, an Anglo, a Korean, and now an Armenian church, and gets very little use, but it used to be that in this doorway here, for many months, the same man slept at night, but they put up posters warning him away. On the whole, one of the remarkable things about this neighborhood is they don't run their bums off. You don't see many in this residential block, but a couple of blocks over in the commercial blocks of Vermont, some of the same bums have lived in the same bushes for the whole 22 years I've lived here. Wow. Along here, I always have the same sort of trinity of thoughts about how each of these buildings was built as someone's hope of security or establishing themselves as a business person, or perhaps their own home, showing their father they were worth something after all, or winning their mother's love, or making enough money from selling the house to marry a girl. I just get bombarded with the incredible probable histories of each building. And then you add onto that things like the civic stuff of laying roads and sidewalks and traffic lights and power lines and sewers and gas lines and water lines and electric lines, and it all just gets to be too much to think about. Years ago, when they were putting in the subway, an entire intersection up on Hollywood Boulevard collapsed, and you could see many, many stories down into the ground, and there seemed no end of layers of tubes, conduits, sewers, pipes, lines. It was exhausting just to think about. I take a lot of photographs on my walk, but I'm mostly influenced by this incredible LA light. And at present, as the sun is just rising, there are none of the stark shadows or poster-like colors that fascinate me. But be warned, I may pause to take photos eventually.
Absolutely do.
I know a lady who lives here, up here, who I encounter frequently on my walks. And over the years, I have collected her elaborate library of excuses for not spontaneously going to coffee with me when we meet. I haven't written seriously for many years, but I can't shake my author's habit of noticing and collecting things which once would have gone into a play or novel or story, and now just rattle around pointlessly in my brain. The major issue in the life of most people in Los Angeles seems to be parking. As I walk along at this hour, and most people still are parked, I realize how many more cars there are than there are buildings, and what a hassle it is for people. You spend an hour driving to work and then an hour once you're there looking for parking. It's got to influence the set of mind. LA people are habitually late, and that's not only because of driving and looking for parking, but I think it's an angry retribution on innocent victims after all that. Here we are coming up on my favorite puddle. I call it putty. Today there's nothing there as it is dry, but putty always reflects different moods and frequently reflects the bright yellow school crossing sign up ahead of us, making it a very cheerful presence. I know a lady in Alaska who asks me for health reports on putty every day. It's getting hotter. Nobody had to tell me there was global warming. I've been walking these streets for 22 years and it gets hotter every year. Oh, I forgot to mention at Kenmore Street back there that for a year in 1983, right down Kenmore Street, I ran a gay theater here. It was very successful. Now it's a club for old Armenian men. They play chess and drink little cups of dark coffee. I went in expecting not to be welcome, and they absolutely laid out the red carpet for me. It was sweet. We're coming up on the commercial blocks, which is jokingly called Little Melrose. Melrose is a very trendy area, and this used to be all little mom and pop businesses, and somebody came in and trendied it up, and not too much success at first, but then it was discovered by movie makers. And I've run into Jennifer Aniston and Ashton Kutcher over here making movies, and that made it popular. And now it's quite lively. It really is Little Melrose. Here you see vintage clothing shops and such stuff popping up on the side streets. People park over to the west, and on Friday and Saturday nights, you just see young people streaming through here. That's my favorite place, House of Pies. I used to eat there every day back when I had money. Now only when I'm with a rich friend do I get to go in. And here is Vermont and Franklin. See our trendy storefronts? And now starts the long trek. It's not really 10 blocks. They cheat a little on the numbering. I do my counting by post office numbers on the houses. So sometimes for 3 blocks, it'll be the 5,000 block. So don't be surprised if we pass many more than 60 streets on a 60 block walk. And here we go. Once again, all the houses murmuring the hopes and dreams of their builders. I've gotten used to this. When I check people's yards, I check the progress of flowers. I know certain merchants along the way. Here comes the sun. Speaking of these long walks, when I was rehearsing my one-man singing show, I discovered that it was very helpful to rehearse my songs as I walked. But the breathing is very different. You sound very different singing a song like Nobody ever knows where the song begins. Hear how there's a vibrato because I'm walking. Ever knows where the song begins. So it always sounded much better by comparison when I got up on the stage and wasn't bobbing up and down. Here comes our little local library. I have learned to take lights very seriously as a pedestrian in LA. And even when I'm obeying the lights, I check every direction carefully in case some driver has gone bonsai that morning. This area, Los Feliz, not everybody knows, was once the first Hollywood. All the first movies were made over here. And the oldest standing studio, the Prospect Studio, is just up on Prospect Street. Coming up is a street named Talmadge Street, which may have been named for Norma and Constance Talmadge, silent screen stars, or their father, who was a star before them. Yeah, there's a wonderful book called Los Feliz in the Silent Era, which shows pictures of every block around here as it was in the 1910s and as it is now. Not only the Talmadge sisters, but Charlie Chaplin and Gloria Swanson and Cecil B. DeMille and Adolphe Menjou all lived around here. LA is not really a city. It is a bunch of small towns in the country. On every side you can see mountains and trees and bushes and rivers. It's not like New York, which is such a self-contained concrete construction. But right along here especially, I've seen little mammals and marsupials. Oh, there's a squirrel. And nobody knows all of LA. And frequently when people ask where my shows are, and I tell them on Hyperion, they say, well, I don't know Hyperion. Even though they've lived in LA for 50 years, they've just never been on this blog, which is understandable. So the first thing I do is say, do you know where Baller's Hardware is? And that over there. Or Baller's Art Store, which is here across the street from it. And frequently people do know one of these two places because they're so well stocked that someone from far away may have come to Baller's to get some indispensable supply. And of course Baller's mural is justly famous. It's one of the, on this walk it's the first major piece of public art that we pass. And if they don't know Baller's, I ask them if they remember where Video Active used to be. Video Active was the best gay male porn video rental store ever. And it was right down here. It's a barber shop now. And men from all over California, not just LA, know where I'm talking about when I say it's across the street from where Video Active was, which is interesting, isn't it? But this little purple block here included where Southpaw is where Southpaw, the barber shop is where Video Active was. Used to be very gay along here. Very, very gay. Now it's been heteroized and gentrified. One is the home of the lovers of Mark Thompson and Malcolm Boyd. Mark was editor of The Advocate. Malcolm was a gay rights pioneer who wrote Are You Running With Me, Jesus, and all of that. Died recently. And although I did shows across the street from them in Spirit Studio, I did not know that they lived across the street till very shortly before Malcolm's death. And after Malcolm's death, I kept running into Mark on the street here. So strange, so sad. Anyway, here we are on Hyperion. Mark and Malcolm lived just back there, practically next door to Spirit Studio. And here comes the blessed junction of Hyperion and Evans. Barbarella's Bar, directly ahead of us. And the second story of Barbarella's Bar is some sort of religious service, Episcopalian, I think, which also is Spirit Studios. Ta-da! which is rented out or let out to many of the crazy young performance artists who have dragged me out of retirement. I come here to see their shows, to be in their shows, to help set up their shows, to do my shows. And the hard part is just telling people where it is, since there's no sign.
Well, you don't have to worry about that too much.
Yes, they're going to turn it into a sushi joint, and we'll all be looking for another place to perform.
All right, so it's very noisy here.
So we're still on Hyperion. Across the street is my favorite sign in LA, the white shirt at the cleaners made of the little white lights. I don't know why, I just adore it. And here's the famous Trader Joe's. Another way of telling people where Spirit Studio is to say it's a block south of Trader Joe's. Everyone knows where every Trader Joe's is. Every gay man in LA anyway knows the location of every Trader Joe's in all the boroughs. And across the street is Gelson's Market, which is such an example of conspicuous consumption. Everything in it is incredibly overpriced. I mean, hilariously overpriced. It's like a joke. Thank you. It's like a joke. And I realize people shop there just to show that they can spend that much money. It's the same goods as anywhere else. So that was an education. Now here is one of my two favorite works of public art in LA. I don't know what these boxes are for. Show them the box. But many of them are decorated. And this one, as you can see, has a monument to illegal immigration. A Latino father is holding a map, and his children, all muffled up for a cold night, are looking at it with a flashlight. Its intention is obvious, as I say, a monument to illegal immigration. It was obviously commissioned and is kept up and cleaned and protected, and it's in front of the most money-wasting, elitist grocery store in town. How many paradoxes do you need in one sentence? It's quite nice. Here is Hyperion Studios, which is noticeable only as the place where employees from Trader Joe's across the street take their smoke breaks. And when I'm walking along singing, this is one of the places that gives good resonance. I frightened the Trader Joe's people when I didn't see them. I was coming along singing loudly and they were there. This was MJ's. Hi. This was MJ's Piano Bar, where David Park Epstein, Jane Cantillion, and Lori Donato talked me into getting up and singing open mic a cappella. And again, we discovered that people liked it quite a lot. And I met the wonderful Scotty Bowers there. But it's now been gutted. And Lori, a civic treasure, by the way, pianist, composer, singer, masterful karaoke player, has decamped and moved to Palm Springs. We lost her and we deserved to. I don't know what they're making of MJ's. It's been completely gutted. And here is Mixto's, Comida Latina, notable also as a place of amazing and enjoyable resonance. I make up stories of someone who uses each of the facilities in a mini mall in order and why. And on this one, after acupuncture and cats and dogs and eye exams and presumably a lover's breakup, they overeat on pinkberry and go into Bonsoir for waxing and wind up getting their nails sharpened to go claw the bastard's eyes out. Now, directly across the street from us, where that little green fence is a thwart, there used to be a big yellow sign with those stick figures like you see on walk signs. of people walking children and dogs. And it said, "This is a neighborhood, please keep it safe." But all the people, all the figures were male. Men walking babies, men walking dogs. And I always wondered if that was deliberate or just a slip of the graphic lip. And there was a space after A. So this is A space neighborhood. And I always wondered if it had originally said gay. But recently the sign withered and died and was removed. Here we go. I love those little stick figures. This is Rowena Reservoir. I'm surprised some drag queen hasn't picked that for a name. Rowena Reservoir. Perhaps if I ever get into drag, I'll use it. Oh, I know. Basura solamente. It's on all the garbage cans in LA. It's Spanish for trash only. And if I've always said I would do drag if I could find someone who would make me look like Marlene Dietrich. And my friend Byron Batista, hairdresser and costumer extraordinaire, said, "Sure, Bob, the dress alone will cost $10,000. So I guess Basura Solamente's debut is indefinitely prolonged. Here was one of the first food banks I went to. I go to food banks, people. It's a Korean Presbyterian church. And on Wednesdays at 5, they give out food most politely, which is not true of all food banks, believe me. Some of them treat you like basura solamente. But this one was notable for the fact that they gave out boxed food and canned food and some fresh fruits and vegetables, always including green tomatoes. I always wanted to ask them, whence these green tomatoes? Oh, I forgot to mention that Spirit Studios is exactly 15 blocks from my home. So it's a halfway mark on the halfway mark of my walk. Here we go, onto a sort of beautiful bridge, which must have been built in the 1930s, I suppose, judging from the style of it. It's I always do this overpass instead of the underpass. It's quite lovely. And we're coming into stunning views of the mountains, or hills as they call them. They don't call them mountains in LA, they call them hills. The Hollywood Hills, the Franklin Hills. I never see people along here, hardly ever, unless it's workmen. We're about to come up to some people working on trees here. But I never see baby walkers or dog walkers or joggers or the occasional biker. I take a lot of photos of people working on the streets in LA. I'm not taking one now because there's no sun to speak of. You know, when these streets and sidewalks were built, cars were much bigger. Isn't it odd that they built them so narrow? I mean, 1930s, 40s, 50s cars were easily out to here. Good morning. Good morning. Now, here was an exception to the see no people rule. I once came here and there was a young woman standing right there in the street clutching her dog to her. And I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Coyote, coyote, coyote." She'd seen a coyote, had undoubtedly frightened it away, but she was terrified and had called, had cell phoned a friend to come pick her up. And I waited with her till her friend came. Oh, another thing you see very often is posters for lost pets. All over the city. Now right here, this is an interesting spot. There used to not be cars parked here. For the longest time, this is all blank, except I'd come up and there would be a beat up car with no license plates, obviously abandoned here by its owner or a thief or somebody. Saw that several times. And then all of a sudden, I started seeing parked cars here. Sometimes they're all down this side and that side. So some prohibition must have been relaxed. But I no longer see the lost cars. See the graffiti? It's odd because I never see any evidence of it but the graffiti, but I'm told there's still an awful lot of gang activity around here. And once apparently it was very, very bad and dangerous. You can see a lot of leftover graffiti on the sidewalk. And I'm told most of these are gang markings. The city apparently doesn't do anything about sidewalk graffiti, although, as you can see, they whitewash regularly to get anything off of these parapets and railings. I sometimes see, it's usually a couple, a Latino couple, a man and woman, and he has a paint roller and manfully paints out the graffiti, while she goes to the traffic signs with a bucket of solvent and scrubs graffiti off of them. It's very interesting. I don't know if they're employees. They wear orange jackets, so I don't know if they're employees or if they're people working off some kind of jail time. Oh, another thing. We haven't seen much garbage on the street. Usually there's a lot more. And I often photograph bits of it and title it Another Untold Los Angeles Story. Because there's no light. Here comes a bicycler, this lot. And here we are. As you can see, I think this must have been a 1930s project, this beautiful bridge. The concrete structure, the deco-ish style. It's not very ornamented, but what ornament there is very deco. You can see all of this. And as I say, the city keeps it up as much as is possible. They don't clean them. I'm surprised today. Usually these little nooks are full of filthy garbage. So we must have just missed the cleanup team. I'm sure that yesterday they were all filthy. And here we have this stunning view. Oh, and something I learned from my walking. Can you see the mist rising out of the mountains there? Well, not long ago when it rained and we had big clouds, I saw clouds forming in those valleys and rising up to become rain clouds. I didn't know rain clouds rose from the earth. I thought they sort of distilled up in the air, but no, they're terrestriogenic, some of them. That was an education. And here, of course, is the huge commuter swarm. It's gotten worse. Actually, lately, I don't see so many traffic jams along here. A couple of months ago, gas prices went down, and the next day, there were traffic jams everywhere. It's that direct. Let gas prices go down a dime, traffic jams. There's another of those charming little nooks. This is the sort of moment that makes this walking not only healthy, but pleasurable in it and of itself. I feel so free, happy, and loose, and forget all my money problems. See, I only have one problem. I don't know how much of my personal life you're interested in for this. I have friends, I have artistic fulfillment, I have a life of memories, I have a wonderful life, except I'm short of money. I need to find some way to make $400 or $500 extra dollars a month. Oh, here, if it's of any autobiographical interest, this is where I stopped to relieve my bladder on my way back.
Were you what?
To relieve my bladder on my way back from my walk. You notice it's full of gang graffiti, and all that garbage has been there for years. This has never been cleaned in my experience. It's apparently the pit stop for all males.
Do you need to go?
No, it's on the way back. We have a rigorous schedule here. And down here is where I often see the graffiti cleaners at work. Here's
Okay, I'm gonna
you can see there, somebody somehow probably leaned over the railing and wrote theme, or they may have crawled up and written it, and somebody will have to do equally arduous work to wipe it out. It's very interesting. Up here is the Los Angeles River, sometimes a source of delight. There are often geese and ducks swimming in it. And besides, isn't this all gorgeous? I love LA. Here is a bike path. Huh, it's long. Often you'll see swarms of bicyclists, not necessarily racing. I think they just go out together for exercise. Huge swarms of them, all in the most modernistic helmets. They look like an invasion. I've never seen the cranes, which are on the sign that say Los Angeles River, but I have seen lots of ducks and geese. There go some bikers. I don't know about other people, but for me, moments like this where you see all of this laid out and you realize how much work it took, and planning and scheming and murdering and cheating, by the way, it took to create this. You just marvel at the mind of man. As I say in a song, man is clever. He applied the lever to build the Sphinx and the UN. Having once applied that, how could he decide that sex was sin? And isn't that the paradox? We can do this, but we can't straighten out the simplest socio-political, racial, religious squabbles that have done us in for tens of thousands of years. Oh, God. We are about to enter what I call